What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you through the ultimate guide to the upcoming Game Week 17. So a ton of talking points to go over in this ultimate guide. Alfie Holland, should you guys take him out? If you are going to take him out, who should you replace him with? And without Alfie Holland as a Captaincy option, does this open the way for some differentials? But don't worry, those two big talking points will be covered, as well as the usual stats review, and this week I'll be discussing the in-form teams and the out-of-form teams. So really kind of a jam-packed ultimate guide. So if that's something you guys are interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So the first talking point, as usual, one of my favorite sections of the ultimate guide is going to be the stats review, and I've actually divided this into two sections. The first section is the entire season as a whole. So yes, from Game Week 1 to Game Week 16, how are the teams performing? Then also to give us some more insight into the informed teams, I'll be going over the last 6 game weeks as a whole. Now if you guys are new to the channel, I'll be going over the attacking numbers and the defensive numbers. So let's start off with the attack. So the stat of choice I always like to use is XG non-penalty. I just believe for teams, if you're looking at a team, can't really judge their penalty output over the 90 minutes, so that's why I go for the non-penalty variant. Now all these stats will be per 90 minutes, so just please remember that. And let's start off with our top 6 sides. So over the entire season, Liverpool have the best attack in terms of XG on penalty, just under 2 per game, followed closely by Man City, Newcastle, and then we have Spurs, Everton, and Aston Villa. So literally every single game week when Everton pop up, I'm reminded by the fact that Everton attack has been pretty good this entire season, so if your defenders are facing them, it might not be a clean sheet. I think especially recently we've seen Chelsea kind of lose the clean sheet to them. Overall, some great results from Everton. Now in terms of the other teams, Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle, Spurs, and finally Aston Villa, pretty kind of expected. A lot of us own attackers from these teams, so now I see the numbers do back them up. Now the next teams will be the kind of worst 6 teams in terms of XG on penalty. The reason I want to showcase this is that if you guys have defenders facing these sides, you should definitely play them as the clean sheet chance should be quite high. Now these teams also kind of expected. We have the newly promoted sides, Sheffield United, Luton, Burnley, then we have Forest, Crystal Palace, and finally Wolves. So if you guys are looking to buy attackers from these sides, you might want to think again, as the numbers haven't been that great. Now just remember, this is going to be for the entire season, so this won't come into account if maybe Wolves have been playing better like they have. So just keep that in mind. So on the left hand side, over the entire season, target these sides for your attackers. On the right hand side, if your defenders are facing them, the chance of a clean sheet should be quite high. Now maybe the more interesting numbers will be the next kind of teams. These will be over the last 6 game weeks. There's been no blanks, no doubles. So this is from Game Week 11 to Game Week 16. So let's see who the top 6 sides are from an attacking point of view. So Man City currently have the best attack, followed by Arsenal. A little bit surprising there. They've been putting up a few goals, but I mean Saka hasn't been performing that well. But here's where the big team comes in, Bournemouth with 1.91. Now please also just remember, in the last 6 game weeks, they could have had easier games. That's definitely something to take into account when you do look at the last 6 game weeks. But still nicely that Bournemouth are attacking decently. Then we have the usuals, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Newcastle. Chelsea making an appearance here. Over the last 6 game weeks, they've actually scored a few goals. And that's why I wouldn't worry too much about that Everton game. Now I just want to focus on Bournemouth again, because when we're talking about kind of Alfie Holland replacements, there's definitely one in terms of Dom Solanke. So you guys jumping on the informed Bournemouth. Now on the right hand side, over the last 6 game weeks, we can see that Luton, Sheffield United, Forest, Wolves, Brighton, and finally Burnley have the worst attacks. Brighton, quite a surprise there, but recently they haven't been too great. So largely on the right hand side, similar to the kind of entire season, only Brighton, new addition there, but I do think they'll hopefully improve. Now on the left hand side, in terms of teams to target, the only one that I can maybe recommend is Bournemouth. If you guys don't have a Chelsea option, I can maybe recommend going for one of their more nailed attackers. But after Sterling's benching, I don't exactly know who that's going to be. Also, while you're at it, in the back of your mind, keep the fact that Bournemouth are in a good attacking moment, and maybe we should jump on them for the time being. Now in terms of defensive numbers, I'll be going over 2 stats. For the best defenses, I'll be going over expected clean sheets. This is per 90 minutes, the chance of a team keeping a clean sheet. And then in terms of the worst defenses, I'll be going over XG conceded, because generally we're looking at what teams concede the most. So in terms of the entire season, we can see that Arsenal and Man City are tied as the best defenses. This is quite disheartening, as I've owned the double up of Arsenal for a few game weeks now, and I've only got 1 clean sheet. But it's another reason to maybe keep hold of them if you guys do have Saliba and Gabriel or Zinchenko. With some easier fixtures, hopefully the clean sheets come about. Then in terms of Man City, I can never recommend any of the defenders. The centre backs are super hard to predict, and Edison is quite expensive. Newcastle's numbers also looking pretty good, but they have kind of digressed a bit. and recently they've been pretty terrible. Then you have Brentford, Aston Villa, and finally Liverpool. So if you guys have gone for someone like a Flecken, you might count yourself a little bit unlucky, as their defensive numbers have been pretty good, but I don't think the clean sheets have been that strong. Aston Villa also a surprising one. I know with their high line, a lot of us are thinking that they might concede a few, but a little bit sad that Matty Cash has been benched now because he offered that defensive and that attacking threat. Then in terms of Liverpool, if you guys do want to jump on the Trent train, he could be a good option as the Liverpool defense is improving slowly. Now for the worst teams in terms of the whole season, we've got Luton and Sheffield United, by far the two worst defenses. If you guys know, Bournemouth actually faced Luton at home in Game Week 17, so a pretty good attack in the moment versus a pretty bad defense. But these two are kind of an expectation, have shipped a few goals this Premier League season, and they're followed by Bournemouth, West Ham, Burnley, and finally United. So yes, United have actually crept in to the bottom 6 teams from the whole season. That defensive department has had its injuries, the midfield has had its injuries as well. But who plays them this week? None other than Liverpool and Mo Salah. So just remember this when we talk about the Captaincy debate a little bit later on. United haven't been great in this moment and over the entire season, and they're versing a pretty strong attack and Mo Salah. Other than them though, pretty kind of expected teams, newly promoted sides from previous seasons, and then also West Ham, and we all own Areola. But now let's go over the numbers for the last 6 game weeks and some interesting finds in terms of the best defenses. You can see Bournemouth surprisingly at the top spot. Now this might be because Bournemouth have actually been defending pretty well, but I think this is also because some defenses have dipped off form, but at least Man City, Arsenal, Brentford are still there. Then you also have Fulham and Wolves, also some surprising entries there. But just remember, over the last 6 game weeks, some of these teams have had easier games. So with the defensive options looking as scarce as they are currently, are any of you guys jumping on Bournemouth, Fulham, or Wolves? At least they are quite cheap. On the right hand side, let's go over those numbers. You guys can see Luton once again being the top spot. They've conceded a slightly higher amount of XG, 2.42. And then just look at those next 4. So Spurs, Chelsea, Newcastle, and finally United are all in terms of the worst defenses. But as mentioned, some of these teams have played each other. Just remember that Spurs-Chelsea game. Chelsea had a lot of XG. And in the third best defense, Newcastle have regressed quite a lot. United also popping up here. So in terms of that Mo Salah Captaincy, it looks pretty strong, as they don't seem to be in a great moment. Then Burnley finish off the list, so it would have been a little bit of a weird one if you thought that Burnley have a better defense than United, Newcastle, Chelsea, and finally Spurs. But I guess that's the Premier League season we're in currently. So this kind of screenshot is really surprising for me. You guys can see on the left-hand side, your Bournemouths being the best defenses versus your Chelseas and Spurs. Newcastle also a little bit of a worry as a double up in the Dubravka and Lascelles department, but I do expect them to improve over these future game weeks. So comment down below, what team are you guys targeting for your transfers in? What team caught you by surprise? Was it United and the Mo Salah Captaincy? Was it the Newcastle defense or the Bournemouth attack? So many interesting insights can be gauged from these stats. Now, if you guys do want to go over your own combinations, you guys can go over to Fantasy Football Fix. They have their Opta Stats sandbox there. If you want to go over XG conceded for your better defenses, that's 100% fine. They have basically every stat under the sun. Now, the next talking point, and probably the biggest one of this ultimate guide, is going to be Erling Haaland, and if you guys do replace him, who's the best option? Now, the latest news that we have, thanks to FPL Focal, was the fact that Alfie Holland, Erling Haaland's dad, and all his kind of brothers, sisters, and friends transferred him out before Game Week 16. So what does that tell you? It might be a long-term injury. I don't think they would have taken him out if maybe Erling said that he would be missing 1 or 2 games. So this does worry me slightly as a Haaland owner. Now, obviously, this could be kind of false. This could be just the fact that they don't really take FPL that seriously. He wasn't playing 1 game week. They wanted to take him out. But I don't really think that Pep Guardiola is going to give us anything before the press conference for Game Week 17. So we are in a little bit of a tough spot at the moment. I don't think any concrete news is going to come about, but maybe some training pictures on Thursday or Friday. But what it's looking like is that Erling Haaland might be a sell. So if you guys are looking to replace Erling Haaland, there are a few replacements. This makes it a lot easier because he is the most expensive striker in the game. So literally everyone is on the table. Now, there are a few replacements that you guys can go for, some differential punts, but the 4 that I'm currently looking at is Solanke, Watkins, Raul Jimenez, and then Darwin Núñez. Now, in terms of like-for-like replacements, I think that Ollie Watkins, if you guys don't own him, is probably the most sensible one, the most template one, but there might be a case for one of these other options. So the first thing I want to do in these comparisons, like I always do, is go over the fixture debate and then the stats debate. So let's bring up the fixtures on the right-hand side. Now, the biggest thing about Erling Haaland, unfortunately, that we don't have is a concrete timeline. How many game weeks will he be missing for? Because at the moment, it might be a 2 or 3 week punt. So let's go over these players one by one. And I think in terms of my own team, I already own Ollie Watkins. And that's why Dom Solanke might be an enticing option, because the next 3 on paper look pretty strong. So Luton at home, the best game in the Prem at the moment, Forest and then Fulham. Yes, after that, the run looks slightly tougher, but if Holland's back in 3 game weeks time, that's a perfect transition. Now in terms of Ollie Watkins, also some good fixtures coming up: Brentford, Sheffield United. He then faces United, whose defense isn't great, Burnley, Everton, then finally Newcastle. And I just think he's the most natural replacement or the most tempered one. Now differential punt could be Raul Jimenez, Fulham on absolute fire, back-to-back 5-0s, and Jimenez has been getting a few returns. Now they face that Newcastle side that hasn't been defending well, they then face Burnley, Bournemouth, so those 2 fixtures on paper could be good, but I'd consider him the most punt option out of these 4. Then the final option might be on the way out of some people's FPL teams, but he might be on the way in for others. It's Darwin Núñez, and Liverpool has some tougher games on paper. Now United could be a blowover, but also could be a tougher game, almost a form changer for that United side. And they have Arsenal, Burnley, Newcastle, Bournemouth, and finally Chelsea. Now the biggest thing I guess about Darwin Núñez is, will he start all these games? I don't exactly think so. As the attacking options come back from injury, there might be some more rotation. But as you guys will see shortly, Darwin Núñez is an absolute stats buster. So on paper here, what I would probably say, if you guys are looking for the more medium term, I would suggest Ollie Watkins. But if you guys are taking a short term punt, I think that Dom Solanke is where it's at. Those next 3 on paper just look too good. An outside punt might be at Raul Jimenez if you guys already have maybe a Dom Solanke and a Watkins. And if you have Darwin Núñez, I'd probably just keep him. So that's the kind of fixture analysis or the fixture review as mentioned. Watkins probably for the medium term, Solanke for the short term. But if you guys disagree with me, comment it down below. Now let's go over the stats numbers, and as you guys can see on the left hand side, I'll be going over minutes, XG of the last 6 game weeks, points, and finally expected FPL points. All of these are per 90 minutes. So Dom Solanke and Watkins are the 2 most sensible options. I will say that Raul Jimenez though is nailed at the current moment, whereas Darwin Núñez might be rotated. But here's where Darwin Núñez does kind of get a little bit appealing. In terms of the stats, no one beats him. He has such high numbers, especially per 90 minutes. So in terms of XG this entire season, he comes out trumps with 0.83 compared to 0.52 and 0.56. Unfortunately, Raul Jimenez dips off a bit, but recently he's been a lot better with 0.44 XG in the last 6 games. Now as you guys can see the power of Dom Solanke's form and Bournemouth as a whole, 0.75 in the last 6 games, where we've seen a slight dip off with Ollie Watkins and also Darwin Núñez. Now in terms of actual points scored per 90 minutes, you can see that Darwin Núñez is leading at 6.41, but closely followed by Ollie Watkins with 6.37. Unfortunately, over the entire season, Dom Solanke and Raul Jimenez haven't been that great, and they're basically bang on with the expected numbers. Other than them though, you can see that Darwin Núñez is slightly underperforming, whereas Watkins is overperforming, which is an expectation with Darwin Núñez's finishing. So now as you guys see the reason why I think that if you have Darwin Núñez, you just keep him. Would I buy him? Probably not. I think there are more sensible options elsewhere. I think the stats probably back up what I was talking about in terms of the short term versus medium term. Ollie Watkins is a sensible option for the more medium to long term. Whereas if you guys are taking a punt for the short term, Dom Solanke is on form, and therefore he'd be my recommendation. Now there might be some other options out there that I'm not even thinking about. If you guys want to go for a more pay from Brentford, go for it. But I think out of these 4, you guys can select your replacement. But in the comments down below, who's your Erling Holland replacement? Is it one of the players that you see on screen right now, or are you guys going differential? I've seen a ton of different options over on Twitter. Now the final talking point I want to go over is going to be all about the Captaincy debate. Without the main man Erling Holland and his effective ownership, does this open the way for some more differential captains? I don't exactly know. So my favorite option this week and the most sensible one is probably Mo Salah against that terrible United side. But as mentioned, I've got a weird feeling as a Liverpool fan because this game has so much hype around it. Just seems like an expectation that Liverpool are going to demolish United, and will that actually happen? But as mentioned, the most sensible option, the highest predicted point scorer from Fix, 6.4, and he's followed closely by Heung-min Son. So out of these 2 options on screen right now, Salah and Son, I think the majority of Captaincy will lie between these 2, and both in performing in Game Week 16 makes it even tougher. Now Son also faces Forest, a pretty bad defense at the current moment, but I guess both players have easier fixtures. Now he's predicted to score slightly less points, 5.9, but I expect a healthy Captaincy on either of them. Now the last option was a little bit tough to kind of decide on. It was between 2 strikers, but the striker I've opted for was going to be Julian Alvarez, as with Holland out and him playing centre forward probably, it almost makes him a no-brainer. So I think if you guys were looking to captain Erling Holland anyways for Game Week 17, Julian Alvarez is a perfect replacement. Just remember, I probably wouldn't bring him in because they blank next game week. But to me, just a natural replacement. As mentioned, Man City, such a strong attack, whoever their striker is will score you FPL points, and that's why Alvarez is an enticing differential option. Now the other option, you guys might have guessed it was Dom Solanke, the best fixture on the cards, Luton at home, and Bournemouth have been attacking pretty well. But I think generally just owning him might be enough in the Captaincy or lie between Son and Salah. So comment down below who's your captain for Game Week 17. Now this is going to kind of conclude the talking points for the ultimate guide for Game Week 17. But as always, if you guys have any talking points, any questions, drop them in the comments down below or my Discord server where I'm slightly more active. But this is basically a wrap for the video, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Team selection coming up shortly, where we are looking to take a -4 hit. But for the time being, I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.